The year is 2023, October 12th. A bad day in Jefferson County. A very bad day. The air is cold. The sky is a sheet of gray steel. The soybeans are dry in the fields, perfectly dry, ready for harvest. 200 combines sit silent. They are green and yellow. They are new. They are expensive. They are connected to the internet. They are powerful machines. And they are useless. As useless as boulders in the middle of a field. Inside the regional office of AgTech Solutions, the phone rings. It does not stop ringing. A young man named David Miller is on the phone. His face is pale. His tie is too tight. He is the third generation of Millers to work here. He speaks into his headset. "No, sir, we don't have an ETA. Yes, sir, we understand the rain is coming Saturday. The update was pushed from corporate, a mandatory firmware patch. It was supposed to increase efficiency by 3%. Instead, it bricked the entire fleet. Every 7, 8, and 9 series combine in a 50-mile radius." David looks out his window. He can see the horizon. He can see the silent fields. But in the distance, far to the east, he sees a plume of dust and chaff, a golden trail against the gray sky. Someone is cutting. Someone is working. He pulls up the satellite field map on his second monitor. He zooms in. Section 14. Reed Farms. The combine is old. He can tell by the shape. It is red, not green. He types the name into the customer database. Evelyn Reed. The file is old, mostly empty. No service contracts, no financing agreements, no software subscriptions. He keeps scrolling down into the archives. He finds a scanned document, a loan application, dated March 1985, for one new John Deere 7720 combine. The signature on the application is Evelyn Reed. The signature on the denial is Frank Miller, his grandfather. David leans closer to the screen. He reads the handwritten note at the bottom, a note written in his grandfather's perfect cursive. Applicant recently widowed. Lacks the necessary temperament and mechanical aptitude for modern operations. High risk of default due to emotional distress. Denial is for her own protection. David Miller goes silent. He lowers the headset onto his desk. The angry voice on the other end is cut off. He looks out the window again, at the plume of dust in the distance, at the one machine that still runs. And he feels something he can't quite name. This channel is for stories like that. Stories about the people who were told no, the ones who were written off, the ones who were protected right out of their own future. If you believe these stories need to be told, if you believe the quiet work of decades is worth more than the loud promises of a moment, then subscribe to this channel. Because what happened between that denial in 1985 and that plume of dust in 2023, that is the story we are here to tell. Let's go back to the beginning. The beginning was an ending. It was the spring of 1984, a highway accident. A patch of ice in late March. Evelyn Reed was 32 years old. She was a widow. Her husband, Michael, was gone. The farm was 640 acres, good bottomland soil, but it was heavily mortgaged. They had bought it from Michael's father 2 years before. They had plans, big plans. Now there was just Evelyn, and the debt, and the silence in the house. The community was kind. Casseroles appeared on the porch. Neighbors offered to help with the planting. They were good people. They meant well. But their kindness felt like a soft blanket, one that could smother you if you let it. Everyone assumed she would sell. Of course she would sell. A young widow couldn't run a farm this size alone. It wasn't possible. It wasn't proper. She would sell the land to one of the big operations, pay off the bank, move to town, get a job at the library maybe. It was the sensible thing to do. Evelyn listened to them. She nodded. She thanked them for the food. She did not tell them what she was thinking. She did not tell them about the promise she made to Michael in the quiet of the hospital room. She did not tell them that selling was not an option. It was never an option. She waited until the planting was done. She thanked the neighbors. She paid them for their fuel. Then she went to the bank. She did not go to the bank for a loan. She went to the ag tech dealership, the dealership that sold John Deere, the biggest name in the county, the only name that mattered, some said. The office was clean. The air smelled of fresh coffee and rubber tires. Frank Miller sat behind a large oak desk. He was a man in his 50s, solid, respected. He coached the Little League team. He was a deacon at the church. He had known Evelyn's family for 30 years. He stood up when she walked in. His expression was full of sympathy. "Evelyn," he said, "it's good to see you. I am so sorry for your loss." Evelyn nodded. "Thank you, Frank." She did not sit down. "I need a new combine." Frank's smile faltered. He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit down. Let's talk." Evelyn remained standing. "I've run the numbers. The old Alice Chalmers is on its last legs. It won't make it through another harvest. I need a 7720. I have the down payment. I need to finance the rest." Frank looked at her. His eyes were kind. "That is the source of the problem, the kindness. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. Someone who genuinely believed they were saving you from yourself. Certainty delivered with kindness is a prison. It cannot be fought with anger. It can only be disproven. And that takes decades." Drop a comment below and tell us about a time someone tried to protect you from your own ambition, because this is where the story truly begins. Frank Miller steepled his fingers. He looked at the papers she laid on his desk. The numbers were good. The projections were solid. She had done her homework. This was not the problem. "Evelyn," he began slowly, "a new 7720 is $110,000. That's a lot of machine, and a lot of debt. I know the numbers, Frank. I can make the payments. The yield from last year proves it." He sighed. It was a gentle sound, a sound of deep, paternal concern. "Last year Michael was here. He was one of the best mechanics I ever knew. These new machines, they're complicated. The electronics, the hydraulics. It takes a specialist to keep them running." Evelyn's face was a mask. "I can learn." Frank shook his head, slowly, sadly. "It's not just about learning. It's the stress. Harvest is a battle, you know that. What happens when a hydraulic line blows at 2 in the morning? When a sensor fails and you're losing grain out the back? Michael could handle that. He thrived on it. But for you, alone." He let the sentence hang in the air. He was painting a picture for her, a picture of failure, of her alone in a dark field, covered in grease, crying in frustration. He thought he was being kind. He genuinely believed it. "I'm not going to be the man who lets you bankrupt yourself out of grief, Evelyn. I can't in good conscience approve this loan. It would be irresponsible. My advice? Sell the farm. Take the equity. Start a new life for yourself. You're young. You deserve that." He smiled at her, a warm, reassuring smile. He had just saved her. He was sure of it. Evelyn stared at him for a long time. The room was silent. She could hear the clock ticking on the wall. She felt a cold, hard anger settle in her stomach. It wasn't hot. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of anger that builds things. She picked up her papers from his desk. She folded them neatly. She did not say thank you. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked him in the eye. "You're wrong, Frank." Then she turned and walked out of the dealership, leaving him sitting in his kindness and his certainty. She drove home. The truck felt big and empty. The sun was low in the sky. She didn't go into the house. She went to the workshop. Her father was there, Thomas Reed. He was 70 years old. His hands were gnarled from a lifetime of work. He was sharpening a set of mower blades. The smell of steel and oil filled the air. He didn't look up when she came in. He knew her footsteps. "Well?" he asked. His voice was quiet. He said no. Thomas stopped his work. He wiped the blade with an oily rag. He still didn't look at her. Did he give a reason? "He thinks I can't handle it. He thinks because I'm a woman, because Michael is gone. He said he was protecting me." Thomas finally looked up. His eyes were pale blue, clear and steady. He looked at her face. He saw the hurt there. But underneath it, he saw the anger. The cold, hard anger. He had seen it in himself 50 years ago. When the bank tried to foreclose on his father, he recognized it. It was good fuel, if you used it right. He put the blade down. He walked over to his old wooden toolbox. He opened it. He took out a heavy wrench, a 3/4-inch drive socket wrench. It was old, made of American steel. He held it out to her. "Frank Miller is a good man," he said. "He's honest, he's decent, but he's wrong. He thinks the new machines are smart. He thinks the computers do the work. He has forgotten the truth." Evelyn took the wrench from him. It was heavy in her hand, solid, real. Thomas put his hand on her shoulder. "The land doesn't care who holds the wrench. The land doesn't know your name. It only knows the work. The iron knows. That's all that matters." Evelyn gripped the wrench. His words settled into her. Not a comfort, something harder, a foundation. The iron knows. "All right," she said. Her voice was steady now. "Let's go find some iron." What they found was in a fence row, on Old Man Hemlock's property. It was a graveyard of forgotten machines, and in the middle of it, sunk to its axles in mud and weeds, was a combine. A 1984 Case IH1460 axial flow. It was red, faded to a dull pink in places. Rust had eaten holes in the sheet metal. Birds had nested in the engine compartment. The tires were rotten. The cab glass was shattered. It was a wreck, a piece of junk. Hemlock was happy to get rid of it. He sold it to her for $500, cash, the price of scrap metal. It took them a full day with a tractor and chains to drag it home. The neighbors watched. They shook their heads. "Poor Evelyn. She's lost her mind." Frank Miller drove by. He saw the rusty hulk sitting in her yard. He felt a pang of sadness and a sense of justification. "See," he thought, "this is what happens. This is why I said no. I saved her from real debt. Now she's just playing with toys." He did not understand what he was looking at. He saw a piece of junk. Evelyn saw potential. She saw iron. That winter was the coldest in a decade. Snow drifted up to the eaves of the barn. The wind howled. Inside the workshop, the lights burned late into the night. Every night. Evelyn began to take the combine apart. Piece by piece. Bolt by bolt. She labeled everything. She laid the parts out on the concrete floor, in neat rows, like the skeleton of some great prehistoric beast. She bought the service manuals, 3 of them, each one thick as a phone book. She read them at the kitchen table until her eyes burned. She learned about the axial flow rotor, a simpler design than the straw walkers in the Deere, fewer moving parts, easier to work on. She started with the engine. An International Harvester DT436, a good engine, reliable. She pulled the head. The cylinders were scored. She would need to have it machined. She found a man named Gus in the next town over, an old mechanic who ran a small shop. He had worked on these engines for 40 years. He looked at the cylinder head she brought him. He looked at her. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. "I can fix this," he said. "Cost you $500 for the machine work, 2 weeks." She paid him. Cash. While the engine was at the shop, she worked on the rest. She pulled the transmission, the hydrostatic drive, the cleaning fan, the unloading auger. She replaced every bearing, every seal, every belt. Gus sold her the parts at his cost. He never explained why. She didn't ask. One day, he told her, "Your father helped me out of a bind back in '68. Brought his planter over when mine broke down. Didn't ask for a dime. Just said neighbors help neighbors." He looked at the pile of parts on her floor. The iron remembers that stuff. He was teaching her more than mechanics. He was teaching her the language of the machine, how to listen to it, how to feel a vibration through the sole of your boot and know what it meant. He taught her how to weld. She patched the holes in the sheet metal. She fabricated a new battery box. She rebuilt the operator's platform. Her hands became calloused. Grease became permanently ingrained under her fingernails. She lost weight, but her arms and her back grew strong. Her father, Thomas, helped her. He didn't say much. He would hold a light, or turn a wrench, or just sit in a chair and watch. His presence was a silent statement. "I believe in you." By March, the snow began to melt. The engine was back from Gus's shop. It was clean and painted IH red. It looked new. They spent a week lowering it back into the frame, connecting the fuel lines, the wiring harness, the hydraulic hoses. Finally, the day came. They filled it with diesel, and oil, and coolant. Evelyn climbed into the cab. There was no glass. The seat was just a metal pan. She put the key in the ignition. She took a deep breath, and she turned it. The engine sputtered. It coughed black smoke. It turned over once, twice, and then it roared to life. A loud, powerful, beautiful sound. The sound of her own work. The sound of her own freedom. Thomas stood in the doorway of the shop. He didn't smile, but a light came into his pale blue eyes. "The iron knows," he whispered to himself. The first harvest was a test. The wheat was golden in the July sun. Evelyn drove the red 1460 into the field. It wasn't pretty. The paint was a patchwork of old and new. The cab was still open to the air, but it ran. The neighbors watched from their trucks on the road. They made bets on how long it would last. An hour, maybe 2. The combine cut a straight line through the wheat. The rotor spun. The grain filled the hopper. It worked. It actually worked. She had a breakdown on the second day. A hydraulic hose burst. Hot fluids sprayed everywhere. She shut it down. She didn't panic. She got her tools. She had a spare hose. She had learned how to make one at Gus's shop. She replaced it. An hour later, she was cutting again. Frank Miller heard about it at the coffee shop. Heard she got the crop in. Every last bushel. He felt a flicker of surprise. And something else. Something he didn't want to name. That was 1985. Let me tell you about the next 38 years. Because this is where the story becomes bigger than one woman and one machine. 1987. She bought 80 acres from a neighbor who was retiring. Cash. Her yield per acre was 10% higher than the county average. The axial flow rotor was gentler on the grain, less cracking. The elevators paid a premium for quality. Frank Miller's numbers didn't account for that. 1992, a drought year. Corn withered on the stalk all over the county. Evelyn had spent the previous winter modifying her planter. She built her own no-till system to conserve moisture in the soil. Her crop was stunted, but she had a crop. Many of her neighbors had nothing. She bought another 160 acres. Cash. The red combine kept running. She knew every bolt, every grease fitting, every sound it made. It was an extension of her own body. 1998. The first GPS systems started appearing. Frank Miller's dealership held a seminar. Precision agriculture. Yield mapping. Variable rate application. The future, he called it. Evelyn didn't go. She was in her workshop, rebuilding the combine's transmission. She had bought the part 6 months earlier. She knew it was getting weak. She could feel it in the controls. The machine told her what it needed. She listened. 2005. A hailstorm flattened 200 acres of her best soybeans. The insurance company tried to lowball her. She didn't argue. She took the check. And she bought the 80 acres next to the highway. The land everyone said was worthless. It was cheap. Cash. She spent the next 2 years rebuilding the soil. Cover crops. Manure from a local dairy. She knew the land was all that mattered. The dirt is enough. 2012. Frank Miller retired. His son took over the dealership. The machines were bigger now, more powerful, and much more expensive. A new S-Series combine cost $500,000. It drove itself. It had more lines of code than a fighter jet. But the farmers didn't own it. Not really. They couldn't repair it. They couldn't modify it. They just made the payments. They were tenants on their own land, dependent on the company for every software update, every diagnostic check, every specialized part. Evelyn's farm had grown to 2,000 acres, all paid for, no debt, not a single dollar. She still drove the same 1984 Case IH1460. Over the years, she had modified it, upgraded the engine, improved the cleaning system, installed a simple yield monitor she built herself. But the core of the machine was the same. The iron was the same. And it ran. Year after year, it ran. Frank, in his retirement, would sometimes drive the county roads. He would see her farm, the neat fields, the well-maintained buildings. He would see the old red combine in the shed, cleaned, ready. He never stopped. He never said anything, but he watched. He was a witness, a quiet witness to the woman he had tried to protect, the woman who had never needed his protection at all. Which brings us back to 2023, October 12th, the day the firmware update failed, the day the future of farming went dark. The rain was coming, a week of it, the forecast said. A crop left in the field through a week of rain could be a total loss. Panic was setting in. The phones at the dealership were ringing. But now the calls were different. They weren't just angry, they were desperate. David Miller, Frank's grandson, felt the weight of it all. The weight of 200 farmers' livelihoods. The weight of his family's name. His father was on the phone with corporate lawyers. His grandfather, Frank, came into the office. He was 83 years old now. He walked with a cane, but his eyes were still sharp. "What's the word?" Frank asked. David shook his head. "They don't know. They say it could be days. A team is flying in from Moline." "Days?" Frank said. "The crop will be ruined in days." He looked out the window, the same window he had sat by for 40 years, and he saw the same thing his grandson had seen. The plume of dust to the east. One combine. Running. "Whose land is that?" Frank asked. David looked at his screen. Evelyn Reed. Frank was silent for a long time. He looked at his grandson's pale, worried face. He looked at the frantic chaos of the office, and he knew. He had been wrong. Not just wrong in 1985, wrong for 38 years. Wrong about everything that mattered. He picked up his coat. "Where are you going?" David asked. "To see an old friend," Frank said. He drove his truck slowly. The gravel crunched under the tires. He drove down the long lane to Evelyn Reed's farmstead, the same lane he had driven past 1,000 times, but he had never turned in, not once. He parked near the workshop. The big doors were open. The 1460 was parked just outside. It was dusty. The engine was ticking as it cooled. Evelyn was standing on the platform, checking the grain in the hopper. She was 61 years old. Her hair was gray, pulled back in a ponytail. She moved with a slow, deliberate confidence. She saw his truck. She watched him get out. She did not seem surprised. She climbed down from the combine. She wiped her hands on a rag. "Frank." Her voice was even, not cold, not warm, just a statement of fact. "Evelyn," he said. He stood before her, an old man, leaning on a cane. He had rehearsed a speech in the truck, an apology, an explanation. But the words felt hollow now, useless. He just looked at her. At the combine she had built from scrap. At the farm she had built from nothing. "My son's beans are still in the field," he said. 400 acres. The new combine won't start. None of them will. The rain is coming Saturday. He didn't ask the question. He couldn't bring himself to. He just stood there, a man who had held power, a man who had been certain, now asking for grace from the woman he had denied. Evelyn looked at him. She looked past him, at the silent, waiting fields all across the county. She thought of that day in his office, the kindness in his voice, the absolute certainty in his eyes. Proving someone wrong who thinks they're being kind is the loneliest fight there is, because they never see it as a fight. They see it as a tragedy they tried to prevent. She did not say any of this. She did not need to. The proof was all around them, in the rich soil, in the full grain bins, in the sound of the cooling iron. She glanced at her combine, the old red machine. "The iron knows when it's time to work, Frank. I'll be there after I finish my north quarter. Should be tomorrow morning." Frank Miller finally met her eyes. He saw no triumph there, no bitterness, just a quiet strength that had been there all along. He had just been too certain to see it. "Thank you, Evelyn," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. That's all he could manage. He turned and walked back to his truck, an old man, leaving the future he had tried to stop. The legacy of Evelyn Reed is not written in headlines. It's written in the soil of 2,000 acres of paid-for land. It's written in the quiet hum of a workshop where things are still fixed, not just replaced. She finished her harvest. Then she started on the Miller farm, then another neighbor, and another. For 5 straight days, the red 1460 ran. It ran while the ag tech engineers in their clean uniforms swarmed over the silent green machines, plugging in laptops, arguing on the phone. She harvested over 1,000 acres for her neighbors. She didn't ask for much, just enough to cover her fuel and her time. She saved them. The woman they had pitied, the woman they had whispered about, she saved their crop. But her real legacy started the next winter. Young farmers started showing up at her workshop, kids who had bought the big, new, expensive machines, and now they were scared. Scared of the debt, scared of their own helplessness. "Can you teach us?" they asked. "Teach us how to fix things. Teach us how to be independent." So she did. She held classes in her workshop on winter Saturdays. Basic welding, diesel mechanics, hydraulic systems. She taught them the language of the iron. In 2025, she used the profits from her farm to start a scholarship, the Evelyn Reed Self-Reliance Scholarship, for young women entering agricultural mechanics programs at community colleges. The first recipient was a girl from Jefferson County. She wanted to be a diesel technician. Evelyn didn't just give her money, she gave her a spot in her workshop, an apprenticeship, a chance. Today, on the wall of that workshop, there is a single tool. It hangs on a hook by itself. It's a 3/4-inch drive socket wrench. Old, heavy, made of American steel. Sometimes a student will ask about it. Evelyn will take it down from the wall. She'll let them feel the weight of it. "This was my down payment," she'll say, "on my freedom." The world is full of Frank Millers, good people who are certain about your limitations. They want to protect you. They want to save you from the burden of your own dreams. They will give you 1,000 sensible reasons to quit, to be smaller, to be safer, and their kindness will feel like a cage. This story is a reminder that the most powerful thing in the world is a quiet decision. A decision to pick up a tool, to learn, to build, to work, to prove them wrong over the course of 10,000 days, not with words, but with the harvest. Right now, somewhere, someone is being told they can't. They are being protected from their own potential. If you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it with them. If this story reminded you of a tool in your own life that meant freedom, tell us about it in the comments. And if you believe that the iron knows and that the work is all that matters, subscribe to this channel, because we have more stories to tell.